Hey everybody, welcome to WP Roundtable, episode 145? Actually, 4, I think. I mistyped that. I think we're on episode 144 WP Roundtable, and today we've got a very special guest, an old friend, local here in Michigan, from the beautiful city of Grand Rapids, Mrs. Cate DeRosia. How are you doing today, Kate?
I'm doing great, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Nice to talk with you today, as always.
Oh, why, thank you.
Kate and I hung out at many different WordCamps and after parties and chatted more than a few times about all the cool stuff that she's doing, and we're gonna dive into that. So I'm looking forward to kind of letting everybody else know what it is that you're up to.
I'm not sure that's always such a good idea, Kyle.
Trust me, nothing's gonna go wrong.
Okay.
First, we're going to share our quick picks of the week. So this is something that we've encountered that is, we believe, worthy of sharing with the world. I'm going to share 2 quick things. One, I like this website that someone, a friend or colleague or mine, shared a few days ago, and it's a great resource for sharing with clients, friends, noobs to the internet. The website is doesmysiteneedhttps.com.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's a great website. It's really awesome. Yeah. One page HTML site listing all the historical objections and concerns and questions that people may have, with very detailed, eloquent, and informative and documented answers responding to each of those. So it's a very thorough response to the question, does my site need HTTPS? Nice. Bookmark that, share it with people. A lot of people need to know the answer to this persistent question. I'll give you the short answer. It's yes. And my other quick pick is twofold. There are, in fact, nope, I was wrong about part of that. The speaker call for Ann Arbor WordCamp is still open. That's going to be closing very soon, probably at the end of next week. If you're tuning in right now, today it is a date in July. I don't know what date it is.
17th.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
So the end of next week is probably when we will close the call for speakers for WordCamp Ann Arbor. And you can get tickets now if you're so inclined. If you're someone local to Kate and I in the Michigan area, you might be pretty interested in checking this one out.
Well, because both you and I will be there, so.
Yes, exactly. You'll bump into both of us in person, just as you will at a WordCamp that's coming out much sooner, WordCamp Grand Rapids. You'll see us both there.
I was informed that if I'm going to plan a WordCamp, I do actually have to show up at the WordCamp. So, yeah,
we probably don't need to give too much of a preview, because WordCamp Grand Rapids is a topic we're going to be discussing a little bit later in the show. But suffice to say, tickets are for sale right now if anyone's interested. So, Kate, do you have anything to share?
I do. I have a site that my husband ran across, but it's called colors.webinista.com. And you pick a starting color, and it gives you complementary colors to it. Some of them are random. Sometimes it gives you a set of 4, a set of 5. And it gives you, at least on my Chromebook, it gives me the HSL numbers for it. You're supposed to be able to click a little button, which I think might not be working in Chrome, that will likely give you the hex number for it. But
that's cool.
If you're someone who's maybe not a designer, but it has been tasked with putting some colors together, it's, again, it's a single page. It's a really simple way to find some colors that maybe just, you just wouldn't have thought of in the first place.
Brilliant.
So just, a great way to waste an afternoon.
That sounds like a useful resource.
A useful tool for someone who needs it,
There's a lot of people who need it. A lot of them. Most of my clients probably need it.
That's true.
All right, Kate. Thank you for sharing that valuable tool. Let's talk a little bit about your background. For anybody who maybe doesn't already know, it could be somebody. Let's dive into that just a little bit.
Sure.
And if you don't mind, before we talk about what it is that you're doing now and your developing career. Talk about what it is that you set out to do when you were younger, when a young Cate, maybe a teenager, maybe however young you were, when you said, there's something I want to do with my life, and I'm going to go out and try and do it. What was that? How'd you act?
The first thing I wanted to be was a farmer. I grew up on a farm. I grew up in northern Michigan. I was always a good student, just one of those people that fit school really well. So about 11th grade, when I told my teachers I wanted to be a farmer, everybody kind of freaked out and explained to me that I really should do something else, which now that I'm older kind of, makes me a little angry, because you need smart farmers too. But I left high school to become an English teacher, a high school English teacher, because it just felt like literature particularly gets a bad rap. That there's a lot of really interesting things being written out there that aren't the things that are being taught in school. And so there's so much more you can do with it, than what people tend to get exposed to. But about 2 years into college, I realized that being a teacher meant you had to get up and go to school for the rest of your life, like every day. And I reevaluated my life choices at that stage. So then I got to explain to my dad what I was going to do with a general English degree, which at the time, actually, there was very little you could do with a general English degree, except, you could do some, there really wasn't a whole lot. Well, you could do some copywriting. You could go on and get your, become a college professor. Like if you got your PhD, you could, teach at the college level. But really a general English degree was kind of worthless. But then I ended up getting married to a computer programmer and ended up having kids right away. And so the thing I did with my general English degree was homeschool my children. Which I find incredibly ironic, because both of my girls had ended up being, they love English. They're very, it's very easy for them, but they also both love to write, which is not something I actually made them do a lot of in school. It's something they ended up wanting to do on their own. Them getting involved in WordPress, which was really kind of weird too. So I originally started out to be an English teacher, and but the thing I would have loved to have done, like if I could have been something other than being a farmer, is a writer. And again, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, trying to get a job in journalism or any form of writing really wasn't, there just weren't that many of them. And that's one of the really great things about the internet now, and WordPress in particular, is it provides so many avenues for writers to simply write and self-publish and showcase what they can do. And so it ends up opening up a whole world of jobs, whether you're writing content for other people or doing editing or simply writing your own stuff and putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's to a point where the internet was well established before I ever had any semblance of a career or even a job for that matter. Right. So I don't even know what writers did back before the internet. I mean, how did you get your work out and distribute it?
Yeah, you had to submit it to a you had to submit it to an editor, to a publishing house, and see if they would approve it, or if they'd be willing to back your book, or you had to try to get a job in journalism and work as a writer for a newspaper or a magazine. It was still possible to be a freelance journalist, but still a whole lot harder. You couldn't just write up a story and email it to somebody. You had to, I mean, I actually learned typing on a typewriter. I learned official typing, which makes it really hard to type on laptops. I just cannot tell you how much I hate that. But,
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So yeah, I mean, even as, I mean, it feels like forever now to say 25 years, but 25 years ago when I was in high school, we were learning typing on a typewriter. When I went to college, we had email, but the internet didn't have pictures yet. So when I hit college in 94, I still did research at the library using books and magazines and stuff because the internet wasn't there yet.
Right.
And then by the time I left, my husband was a full-time professional web developer.
Sure.
That's just insane.
So let's get a little more recent and talk about kind of turn of events leading up to where you're at now, which we'll talk about next. But you did kind of go through transition a little bit. And,
yeah. I realized about 2 years ago, maybe 3. No, it was about 2. The girls were getting to an age where they were going to graduate. And I did not want to sit around waiting for my husband to get done with work every day. And so, as exciting as that sounds, and so I had always actually, I always intended to have a career. I never thought I would stay home and homeschool and have kids and all of those things. And so what I realized is that I could flip the two. So instead of having a career first and then kids, I had kids first, and then I could start building a career. And because I had strong writing skills, it was right about the time that everybody was starting to recognize that they needed content work. I could see it kind of on the horizon because of the position I was in. And so I just started shaking hands, and I started writing for myself to just kind of get my voice out there, to practice a little bit. And so I just started talking to people and going to WordCamps. Going to WordCamps ended up being a big part of that, but it was actually one of 3 options. I strongly consider going back to school for my master's degree. I like learning, so school isn't really that intimidating for me. Not that it's super easy, but so I thought about going back for my master's degree. I considered looking around for a job working just out of the house, doing, a brick and mortar kind of store. But I knew my husband was going to have his career. He wasn't going to move away from that. And so if I could have a career that was just as flexible as his, that allowed us to attend events together, that allowed me to pick and choose what I wanted to be doing. Because no matter how much I keep trying to quit my family, it's still they're the full-time responsibility, and anything else I do is on the side, although that's getting less and less.
Sure. Yeah. So you made up your mind, a few years ago now, and that you wanted to start pursuing some things or exploring your options, and you learned a little bit about what's there, and following along with your husband, who is probably already attending some events in our industry.
Yeah, he was. We hadn't, trying to think, until 2014. Wow. So 2012 and 2013, Grand Rapids had a WordCamp. And those are the only 2 experiences I had with WordCamp, and I was a volunteer. My husband didn't start working in WordPress until 2010, so we were a little later to the community than a lot of people. 2014, he started attending a lot more WordCamps. I think he went to 6 or 7 that year.
Which was around the time when I met you.
Yeah, probably.
And probably Topher as well.
Yeah.
Well, I might have met him the year prior.
Yeah. And then 2015, it kind of exploded, and we had an opportunity to go to a whole bunch of WordCamps, which was, it started out with him being unemployed and not really sure what we were going to do. And if we were going to freelance, we needed to meet some more people regionally and kind of move outside of our small community. And it ended up moving into a job where part of it was doing some WordCamp attending for that. And then our girls really enjoy going, and so we took them to a number of them as well.
Right.
So most of our family vacations for the last few years have been WordCamps.
I am one of those people who could probably say the same thing.
Yes. Only only so many hours in the day, only so many dollars in the bank. So, you know, do what you can.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's not bad having an excuse to visit places you haven't been. For someone like myself who's not well traveled, WordCamps have been great for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we took them to Virginia Beach, and so we stayed a couple extra days around it, and we took them to the first WordCamp US and spent an entire week in downtown Philadelphia. So there was a lot of WordCamp, but there was a lot of other things as well.
Right. So oh my goodness. Nice.
Yeah.
I do remember we hung out at the time, and the girls were doing their homework at the hotel.
Yes, they were.
Like good girls that they are.
That's one of the joys of homeschooling is, you know, you just take the school with you.
Right. And for anybody not aware already, your husband Topher was a guest on this show before as well.
He was.
He's one of our very early guests, probably pushing 3 years ago by now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So at the time that Topher was on the show, what was going on for you and the family?
Oh, goodness. 2 or 3 years ago. There's a lot that's happened in our family over the last few years. He has changed jobs 4 times.
That would have been September 2014.
September 2014. So in September 2014, he was working for X Team out of Australia.
That's right.
And I got to tell you, there's nothing quite so much fun as being in the Eastern time zone and working for a company out of Australia.
Oh my goodness. It's pretty crazy.
Yes. And he was also working with a team out of, I always get this wrong, but someplace like Romania, so Eastern Europe. So they were coordinating meetings across 3 time zones that were just about as opposite as possible. So
yeah. And then, it's tricky. It's tricky. I know.
So then, so that was September 2014. It was just before Thanksgiving of that year that Hero Press came about. So he kind of left X Team to try a project that the founder of X Team was, XWP now, I keep forgetting, but that Dave, the founder, wanted to try, and that became Hero Press, and was our second real heavy dive into a startup. Which I have so many words about startups.
Oh, I'm interested in hearing them. I don't mean to ask questions about Topher's story. This is your story.
Oh, that's okay. Well, it's all, you know, that's the weird thing about it. When you have a family that homeschools and a husband who works from home, and there's only one income coming into the house, his job is our job. And all of our lives kind of intermix. So it's his story, but one of the biggest things is that every decision he's made or we've made impacts all of us pretty significantly. Every time he changes jobs for the girls and I, it's almost the same as if we were physically moving houses.
Wow.
For him, it's fun and exciting because he's got a cool new place to work and he's got fun new friends and tons of new toys to work on and all of these really cool projects. And we're figuring out a new meeting schedule and a new, you know, like daytime hours schedule, depending on which time zone he's working with. He has to work extra about the first 4 months of any job change. You work way more than your 40 hours generally. And so we lose all of that extra time. And it's worth it, but it's a lot of extra work for us. So I end up doing a lot of single parenting. I end up doing a lot of emotional juggling of the girls' expectations. No, dad can't do this now. He's got to go do this other stuff, but he still loves you, you know, that kind of thing. And I mean, and it sounds awful, and it kind of is, but at the same time, if it's building towards something good, then awful isn't really bad.
Sure.
But it's always been an interesting dynamic between Topher and I, because when he changes jobs, it's always really good for him. And when he changes jobs, it's usually not so good for me. So
right.
At least not in the short term.
Yeah.
Um,
So bring us up to date, if you could,
yeah.
to right now. What's the current situation? What is keeping you busy?
Right now it's pretty cool. Right now I'm working as kind of a developer's assistant, personal assistant. One is for WP Sessions. I will be moving into doing more assisting. Right now I do all of the caption editing for the videos. Brian gives me a bulk dump of all the words, and I have to figure out which words actually belong there. I have to put in periods. I have to turn people's language into sentences, because I don't know if, unless you do this, you don't realize how differently we speak from how you write. So if you write out something, you use correct syntax. It's so completely different. Where when you're just talking and you don't think about it. And so you have to turn sentence fragments into something that's actually understandable.
Sure.
And then I have started doing some work for Pressware, Tom McFarlane.
Oh.
Also as an assistant. Both of which are really great for me because I can do as little or as much as I have in any given week.
That's great.
Yeah. And I started out doing some writing. I started out doing some writing. I had some opportunities to do some editing that I turned down for the time being. And have found that I don't really want to work as a full-time writer. I much prefer being an assistant, which is what I've always done alongside Topher. I mean, the kinds of things I'm doing for other developers are the things I always did for him, but I get a lot less argument.
Yeah. Well, that's important.
It is.
Good working relationship.
There's also a reason that both of those other developers are not working with their wives. So it's just not a good dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty unique when you observe people pulling that off. But that aside, your story. Let's talk a little bit about the skills that you're leveraging now. Like you said, you're doing some writing and some assisting. If things go really well, you continue enjoying this and follow the path that you think they hope that you're on. What do you think this is gonna turn into, or what do you hope it blossoms into?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is be on the business side of. I'd like to be a part of a young company that's growing, and kind of grow into helping with managing the business aspect of it. I don't mind the assisting role. I don't need to be the rock star. I'm very happy to make sure that things are organized and people are, emails are answered and people are paid, and the logistic aspect of it.
Interesting.
And that's kind of a fuzzy goal. One of the things I've learned is the not look too far ahead. It really depends. I mean, if there's one thing you want to do, that's really great. But something I've learned in my old age is that when you get too focused on one thing, you often miss a lot of opportunities that kind of come out of nowhere that you never expected. And if I had stayed quite so focused, I wouldn't have had the opportunities I have right now. So
Sure.
It's good to be reasonably flexible, but that also can mean making sure that you're turning down the right things as well. I've had a number of jobs offered to me that fit my skill set really well, but either the time commitment wasn't right, or I'm in a position to be really picky about who I work with.
That's good.
And so, which is really nice. I mean, it's part of the hard work of getting here. I have that option. And so I take that really seriously. Who I work for matters just as much as what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's hard to do better than the likes of the people you are currently completed some tasks for. Great people.
I'm really thankful. Both really respectful, both really. It helps that they both have young kids. Our first CEO of our first startup did not have children. Mostly because we had children pretty much before everybody else did, it seems. But it was really difficult for him to understand that when you have kids, you can't just. And it's fun for me to watch everybody else now start to have kids and understand the concept that you don't just drop everything, to work, because you can't do that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, that's every time we talk, that's an important topic, something that is a big deal, obviously, to the both of you. I'm curious. I've known lots of parents who maybe would say quite a wide array of things, but on the topic of what you hope your daughters take away from this, what is somewhat of a non-traditional upbringing.
Yeah, it's completely non-traditional.
Is there anything that you really, I mean, you don't have to answer this for them. You don't know maybe what they would answer, but is there anything that you hope would really be their takeaways as they look back on a upbringing, being homeschooled and with remote working parents and everything?
It's pretty cool right now because the girls they'll be 16 and 18 this year. And so I'm starting to really see them as the adults they're going to be. And I can kind of, just hearing them talk, I can tell the things they're taking away from the life that we've given them. For one thing, they chose to continue homeschooling through high school. I was going to send them to school. I was pretty excited about getting my days back. And they both decided they wanted to stay home. And so what they've gotten from homeschooling is the idea that they can learn anything at any time. They learned Portuguese because they went to Brazil last summer. They continued Portuguese and they yell at each other around the house all the time, which is hilarious. But my youngest daughter looks at learning, like she's about to wrap up Portuguese. So she's trying to decide between Italian and Gaelic. Because, she just can. She wanted to learn the guitar. So she found some YouTube videos and she's learning the guitar. She's remarkably good at it. It's really quite astounding. But that was the thing I wanted them to take away from homeschooling. And the thing they really got is that if you want to do something, you can just learn it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be in a building to learn things. Learning is something you can do now and for the rest of your life. As far as like the startups and remote working, one of the really great things that gave them was the idea that they can start their own business. Kind of the same theme of they can kind of do whatever they want. They aren't tied to having to get a job in the factory or having to take the one job that's available. They could start their own business. They could, my oldest daughter wants to be a writer. She understands that it's still really difficult to make a living as a writer. So she's going to get her business degree and do writing on the side. And so they kind of approach life from a more practical standpoint, but at the same time with a lot fewer boundaries.
Fascinating.
But at the same time, I'm not a parent that says they can do anything, because they can't do anything. I mean, my oldest daughter is, she is not athletically inclined. She will not be a women's basketball player. No matter how much she wants to, no matter how much she practices, it's not going to happen, But within a reasonable, within the skills she has, within the talents she has, the life's kind of wide open for them. They can decide what they want to do. And I guess one of the real advantages of the last few years is a hard look at reality. We live in a small house. We're all always together. Mom and dad fight. And they don't always like what happens, and we're still forced to talk about it and figure it out and understand that you can not like what's going on and still have a hand in making it better. You can not being happy about something, it doesn't mean it's the end of something. You know, you can be not happy and still work to fix it. So they won't be surprised by that. You know, they won't think that life is just easy or nobody has problems but them. Everybody has problems. It's how you choose to deal with them.
Those sound like some great takeaways, Cate.
I hope so. You know, I hope I'm not fooling myself. As a parent, you kind of never know. But yeah, it was.
Yeah. All right. Good advice, and I believe that you're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
Not that my opinion on the matter means anything, but
it's, you know, raising kids is one of the scariest things ever, because you don't really know if you did anything right until they hit about 16. And at that point, if you didn't get it right, then it's really wrong. So yeah, it was really nice to see them both kind of turn a corner and realize that, okay, I didn't completely screw this up. But you know, anytime you're doing something outside the box, anytime you're doing something that you're the first one doing it or the only one doing it, it's terrifying. You know, there's nobody really to fall back on to tell you if you're getting it right or not. And the chances of you getting it wrong are incredibly high. And so yeah, a lot of it is just waking up every day and trying again.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I want to ask you a little bit about one way that you are, or a couple ways really, that you are getting pretty actively involved. So you are working professionally right now. You're doing real work, helping real WordPress businesses right now. And you're also helping out in the WordPress community in a couple ways. I know that you do contribute a lot to the local meetup. So tell us a little bit about the Grand Rapids WordPress meetup.
Yeah, the Grand Rapids WordPress meetup is a pretty interesting little meetup. It's you probably have a core group of about 9, and they are almost all heavy developers. Like yeah, eyeballs deep in code all day long. And so it's a really interesting dynamic to try to keep anybody organized. Everybody wants to have a meetup. Everybody forgets that you have to have a plan. And so that's kind of where I came in. Brian started the group about the time that we were getting involved in our first startup and had young kids. And so we weren't really in a position to really be available. And when he finally had the young kids, we took it over from him. And when we did that, we were still pretty neck deep in a lot of change. And so I knew that if I didn't come on to help do some of the organizing, we were going to be throwing it together at the last minute all the time. And so it's I try to keep us moving forward and make sure that things happen, mostly because I have the time to do that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, and it's a great meetup.
It really is, and we work hard to have a variety of topics, and even more so, I'm pretty excited because as I've been going through speaker applications, I'm seeing a number of things that I want to contact people about using for meetup topics. So that'll be really exciting, because it gets hard to just come up with something out of the blue. And Grand Rapids is such a nice community that you don't always get a lot of feedback, because everybody's just happy that you're having a meetup, and they'll just, well, whatever you want to do, that's just fine. But except, we're not going to come if it's that topic. So
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I can imagine that, so interesting. it's great to get some ideas for.
You referred to speaker applications that you're going through. Now I know what you're talking about, but to catch anybody else up to date a little bit, earlier this year, and really in previous years as well, conversations were had about bringing back WordCamp Grand Rapids. Can it happen again? It hasn't since 2014 was the last one, I believe. Yeah. And I was there and had a total blast. And there's been conversations every year since about, can we get another one in Grand Rapids? And in this year, you, after much consideration, decided to take the lead on that and make it happen. So how did that come about that you decided, I'm ready to do this and to bear that responsibility as lead organizer of WordCamp?
Yeah, that was a tough one. Honestly, I've obviously not ever organized a WordCamp, but I've been to enough WordCamps, and I actually know a lot of WordCamp organizers. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to organize at least the first WordCamp. And having been involved in trying to keep the meetup organized, the idea of doing a WordCamp was a little not exactly daunting. It's more that I just wasn't sure that it was worth it. We're in a position to go other places to go to WordCamp, and Chicago has WordCamps, and Ann Arbor has WordCamps. This year, Jackson had a WordCamp. At what point do you get to a point where you just have too many WordCamps? Like, just how many WordCamps do you need in a 2-hour radius? I mean, seriously, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of... I knew it was going to be an emotional struggle for me, just the way I deal with some different aspects of what I knew was going to go into WordCamp. I like to make... I don't want to say that I'm a people pleaser, but it's really important to me that people feel comfortable and accepted, and to make a nice event for the people who are attending. And when you're doing your first WordCamp, there's a lot of guessing that goes into it, and I do not like to guess. I would rather start with a budget and then have to work from there, as opposed to having to try to put together a budget and then find funding and then hope. I'm not a big fan of hoping. So just how WordCamp happens, I knew it was going to be a struggle for me. And if nobody cared enough to keep the meetup organized, why was it worth all of my time to try to make a WordCamp happen? And the thing that it really came down to was the fact that there are people who just can't travel to a WordCamp. There are people in my city who do not have a car, and if they can't take the bus to get there, they can't go to WordCamp. And there are single moms who can find daycare for the day, but they can't find daycare for a weekend, or can't afford to drive 2.5 hours and get a hotel room for a couple nights, and any of those things. And I find WordPress to be such a potential opportunity for so many different people, that having a WordCamp here made it worth it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the thing, and it was hard. It got me a little bit of a late start to it all, because I knew it was going to hurt. I mean, a lot of it is kind of like being barefoot over hot coals, getting it done. The first time, it's just dealing with all those unknowns and all of the guessing the first time through.
Sure.
I mean, I had it all. Let's see. by the end of May, I had all the venues lined up. I had this really excellent plan with all of these really excellent reasons, and it was going to be a really fantastic WordCamp. And I had my first meeting with my organizer, and we talked budget and scrapped everything I had planned.
Oh no.
And just because, they say go find these things, but they don't necessarily say, well, you really should, because they can't tell you what a budget needs to look like for your city, because each city is so different. I mean, I'm not upset about that, but it doesn't make the process any easier,
Right.
Where next year, it's almost like I'm planning 1.5 WordCamps right now. So I'm planning this year's WordCamp and setting up things for next year's WordCamp. Whether it's me organizing or not, I would have something to hand over to the other person to give them a little better idea. But I also, when Brian handed me stuff from the previous WordCamps, that was useful, but some things had changed since then that because there was a 2-year gap.
Right.
And I've not been alone. I've done a lot of it by myself because I'm the only organizer who doesn't have to support a family on what they make. And I have the flexibility to adjust my work schedule around what WordCamp needs. Plus, I don't like delegating things that I don't know what I'm asking the other person to do.
Yeah.
So I've done most of it on my own. Also, the tight time frame. Trying to delegate when things simply have to get done. It doesn't make sense. That said, anytime I've needed anything, a lot of people have jumped up to help. So it's getting into the home stretch, and we'll likely have a WordCamp.
Likely. Oh my goodness, Kate.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really excited me is I did do speaker applications over the weekend, and I had so many good speakers, and I had people from inside the community and outside the community. A few people like you and Steve Grunwell, who can come in and give some really great talks, but also some new people inside our WordCamp community or WordPress community. That I was able to include just about everybody, assuming I can get a third room at our venue. So there's been a lot of that. Just as I'm about to do something and really burst forth, get a couple days to wait and think about it. So,
yeah.
But it was really great to see the number of people who wanted to speak, who had really great ideas on what to speak about, who are actively interested in helping. And that helps reaffirm the idea that WordCamp is a good idea.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, that's really exciting. And I'm super happy to hear that you've got a good speaker lineup. So you're 6 weeks out now.
Yep.
You closed the speaker call last week. So you're sorting through that, trying to build out a fantastic schedule.
It's hilarious. It always seems like I've got about 3 things done at one time. So I had to put a request in for a room, which is most likely just a formality. So I'm pretty sure the room is just sitting there empty. So assuming I get that, I know all the speakers that I want, and I'll be able to post all of their topics so that we won't have the actual schedule out, but before you buy your ticket, you'll be able to see who's speaking on what. And I really like that. For me, that's important. I don't like the idea of people having to buy tickets blindly. If I'm particularly if I'm traveling someplace, there have been camps that if my husband wasn't speaking, I wouldn't have gone, or I wouldn't have gone because I just didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of other people who feel the same way. That as soon as we have our schedule posted every year, we see quite the increase in ticket sales. Most people wait for the schedule.
Yeah, although I was thrilled. So the part of WordPress or WordCamp that I'm weakest in is WordPress itself. Even in my work as a developer's assistant, I don't do a lot with WordPress. So mostly if I'm not writing, I'm not really using WordPress. And so building out the website was a really interesting experience. Did manage to stay married, partly because I gave the building of the actual initial website to another member of our group who I'm not married to. But Topher was really great, actually, about dealing with me on it. But I looked at the dashboard the other day and realized that people actually bought tickets already for WordCamp. And so we'll have a great speaker lineup and at least 20 enthusiastic WordPress people there to listen to them.
It's going to be a great event. I'm really looking forward to it. It's taking place 6 weeks from now.
6 weeks.
Approximately, I think.
Yeah, it's the last Saturday of August. It's the 26th.
Right.
So we've got, it's a one-day camp, but we've got 3 tracks of speakers, one that's pure development, assuming, obviously, we get our room. And yeah, we're going to have lunch on site.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Nobody has to walk anywhere. Free parking, which is really great. Really convenient. Starbucks on site for those who need that.
What more do you need?
I know, so, right?
You mentioned that you've been to a lot of WordCamps. You've formed some opinions at this point about what works, maybe what doesn't so much, and you're putting together something that's pretty special. You take a lot of pride in the Grand Rapids community that you're very involved in. What are some of the maybe previews or some of the areas of the camp that you're really looking at closely to try and stand out and make this a little bit special somehow?
Yeah, it's interesting because I did do that. Having lunch together wasn't my original plan, but it's something I think I'm happiest about. And we might even do kind of a longer lunch. If all goes according to my hopes, we'll have a series of short talks leading up to lunch, and then the opportunity for people to dig deeper into those topics at lunch. But my biggest, so the truth about WordPress is that anything you need to learn, you're probably not going to learn it at WordCamp. You're going to learn about it at WordCamp, but if you're actually going to learn it, you're going to learn it someplace else because there's a million resources out there nowadays. So the thing that really matters, at least in my opinion, about WordCamp is the people. And so having the opportunity to come together as a community, having the opportunity to shake hands, actually meet people, hear how people are using WordPress. So providing some opportunity for that to happen is really important to me. And there's still a lot of opportunity to learn about new things. But if you're coming to WordCamp to learn, how to use GitHub, that's probably not why you should be coming to WordCamp.
Yeah, you might get a little more of the why. Maybe you should. Exactly. Those are some really effective presentations, and sometimes WordCamps do have maybe extended workshops where you get to get your hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something that I would be interested in looking toward in the future. But so what I like about our WordCamp is starting out, I wanted to be simple. I wanted to keep it basic but not Spartan. I wanted to kind of focus on the most important things, which was community, which was taking out some of the, I don't know, when I'm going to a WordCamp in a different city, you have to think about parking. You have to think about where you're going to stay. You have to think about where you're going to get lunch. You have to think about all these things. And one of the things I've been able to do is kind of condense all of that. I made sure that if you're using the bus system, you can get to our venue. If you want to, you can walk to the after party. If you're staying downtown, you should be able to walk to the speaker event. So that you don't have to be driving. I mean, not that Grand Rapids is huge, but if you don't want to be driving around downtown Grand Rapids, you don't have to. You can park somewhere and walk. And the other thing that I did, which is still a little bit up in the air, but most likely did not happen, is we're most likely not going to do t-shirts.
Wow.
And this has been a really interesting conversation that I've had. It was actually suggested to me by my WordCamp Central mentor. And there's a couple of really good reasons that t-shirts are a bad idea. For one thing, they take a lot of volunteer resources, and I would like our volunteers. Our people who would volunteer are also people who want to attend the camp. And when you're volunteering, it's really hard to attend the camp, especially for a one-day camp. So the fewer volunteers we actually need, the more people can actually attend the event. And that was important to me. Being able to get something that's not size relevant to the individual means that I can check something off my list sooner in the process and then focus on something that's a little bit more important. Maybe a speaker's needs, maybe something involving sponsorship. Maybe it's just, focusing more on lunch. Everybody likes lunch. And the other one is, to be quite honest, as a curvier person, I have been in a few situations where I've stood at the t-shirts table. They've showed me the size of the t-shirt that should have fit me, and it's not even close to going to fit me. So my first experience at WordCamp is walking into a strange place, meeting a strange person who's then holding up something that I don't fit into. And it's not something that you think about unless you're that person in that situation. But I'm actually an introvert. People kind of freak me out. And so to have to stand in front of a complete stranger and say, no, that's not going to fit me, that's really uncomfortable. And there's no reason that a fun gift from WordCamp should make people feel uncomfortable.
That's a very interesting perspective, and put in a way that I haven't heard before, Kate.
Yeah.
Well, again,
that. Thanks. It's it's one of those things. It's not like I get angry about it with organizers. I love t-shirts. I have a number of them that I wear, but there are a lot of other really interesting things you could get as swag. I also have a number of t-shirts that I will never wear. I mean, I hear all the time, oh, t-shirts are wonderful. Everybody loves t-shirts. Well, they love the t-shirts that they love.
Mm-hmm.
They don't love the 12 that are in the box in the closet because they're yellow or, have rainbows on, whatever. That's you just because you have a t-shirt doesn't mean that everybody automatically is going to think it's the greatest t-shirt ever.
Yeah, that's true. Good observations.
Thanks. So those are the kinds of things that I think about that my husband as a developer would never consider in his life. It is a t-shirt. I will wear it. No.
Yeah.
And so, to be quite honest, that's one way to make WordCamps a little more friendly to women, because I've heard the opposite as well. Women with a slimmer physique struggle to find t-shirts that don't just overwhelm them. And that's where really moving away from t-shirts as the swag is a good thing to consider, but not a right fit for every camp,
Sure.
I am looking, though, at possibly getting t-shirts for our volunteers. They're giving up their Saturday to come help out with an event that they're not really going to get to attend a lot of. Maybe they should get something a little bit extra special, but that's something I can plan for ahead of time and do a better job of getting sizes that fit them more specifically, because the number of people is just simply smaller.
Right.
So, and then, if you're doing something like that, potentially you're encouraging people to volunteer. If there's someone who really wants to get a t-shirt, volunteer next year. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not a given, but that's but the thing I do think is important is as soon as, like, in this next week, I'm going to put in my ticket just what the tickets cover, and it's going to mention that the swag is not a t-shirt. If people don't show up expecting a t-shirt, then they won't be disappointed. I mean, they may not like the thing they get anyway, because you can't control that. Somebody's going to hate something. But if they at least know ahead of time, look, this is what you're being given. This is what your ticket covers. This is what, then it's one less thing for them to be surprised by. And if people are so.
Okay. Wow. Well, I'm really excited about it. It sounds like, as I expected you would, you put a lot of thought into this already, considerable effort. and this is just going to be a huge success. It's going to be fantastic.
I'm seeing it come together, and I'm just knowing what I know about the topics. And this is something, having been to a lot of WordCamps, I know all the topics are volunteer placed, and you have to go with what you're given. And I respect every single person who stands up and speaks. I've done it myself once, and it is not an easy thing to do. But I've been to plenty of WordCamps where it just felt like they're really heavy in one area but kind of light in another, or and I feel like with our WordCamp, we just were fortunate enough to have a good variety of topics that cover kind of all aspects of things you can do with WordPress.
Sure. Okay. Well, we're kind of running out of time here, Cate, so I've got just a few kind of wrap-up questions for you. We've talked a lot about events. Give us a preview of what's on your calendar and where in the rest of this year, maybe early next year, someone might bump into you in person.
That is an excellent question. I think we're going to be down in Atlanta for Publish the first Thursday, Friday of August, but we haven't finalized that just yet. Obviously, Grand Rapids. I will be out in Ann Arbor, second weekend of October. That's the plan anyway. And to be honest, beyond that, I haven't made any plans. We usually like to get to WordCamp US in Nashville this year. But I'm not sure. My husband changed jobs in January. He's building a company, or he joined another developer as a partner. And it'll depend a lot on where they are in building the company as to how much we travel this year. And we cut back. When we traveled in 2015, it put a strain on the girls. We hit 12 WordCamps that year in about a 9-month span. And if you do the math on that, that's a lot of WordCamps. And so because our time with our girls is kind of short, we committed this year to being home a lot more. Which is ironic because they're in Canada at the moment, but it was more, and I knew with WordCamp Grand Rapids that I was going to be pretty limited on what I should be out doing too. So
right.
So yeah,
that's fair. Mm-hmm. Do you have any good recommendations for me, Cate, for future guests on this show?
I do actually. Have you had Bridget Woolard yet?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. That's great. I'm so glad that you had Bridget on because she's so delightful.
Isn't she though? Isn't she?
My goodness. I thought I had so many. And because I know, have you had Andrea on?
Yes.
Kyle, killing me here. Diane Kinney?
Not yet.
Oh,
there you go.
See, there we go.
Okay.
She's a good one.
There you go. So third try.
She's a Wisconsin transplant living down in Sarasota. I think she's in Sarasota, Florida. And she's been doing a lot of really interesting things. She comes from a corporate background, and I'm not quite sure how she got into WordPress. So, but I know she is a smart lady.
Yeah.
And super fun. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well aware of who she is.
Okay.
I've had the pleasure of meeting her in person, and that's usually most often a precursor for me to talk with them on the show. But I'm gonna get myself acquainted with Diane a little bit better and get her on the show. Thank you for the good suggestion.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, and I'm happy to help with that if you'd like.
I appreciate it, Cate.
I haven't met her in person either, but we're really quite good friends. So
that's good. Well, this has been a pretty fun discussion, Cate, as I expected it would be. It always is. So. For anybody else tuning in or watching this, I encourage you to go say hi to Cate if you see her at an event. She's just also charming and fun to chat with, and I recommend it. And wish you all the best, Cate. I look forward to seeing you 6 weeks from now in person at your WordCamp in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And a lot of other fun people will be there as well. So it's going to be a fantastic success.
I'm hoping so.
So thank you again for spending an hour of your evening with me. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thanks so much, Kyle.
Thanks, Kate.